and the seam heads that bleed orange and black. This is SportsPhone KNBR, sponsored by Industrial Metals on the sports leader. Check the live stream on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
All right, welcome in. Special Sunday SportsPhone KNBR edition. It's John Dickinson. We're with you at 6:20. And who knows how long we're going to keep this thing going. It's a special Warriors Free Agency edition of the program. 808 KNBR. We appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. Let's run down for everybody. Greg Silver is here. 415-808-5627. You can give me a call or shoot me a text here. We'll keep things going to be determined. It's kind of a free-flowing thing here as we run down everything that's gone on with the Golden State Warriors as free agency officially a little over 3 hours in the books now at
6:20 Pacific time here on the West Coast. So here's what we know to this point. The Golden State Warriors are losing Klay Thompson. Now, per multiple reports, the Warriors and Klay are parting ways after 13 seasons. That news, and it's been headed down this path for the last couple of weeks, but the time is here, and right at 3:01, multiple reports, Klay and the Warriors are parting ways. He's going to be on a new team. That team still to be determined as free agency, and it looks like Paul George is going to Philadelphia now after the Warriors struck out on Paul George yesterday. And here's the reality. It's been an awful last 2 days for the Golden State Warriors. Absolutely the worst case scenario, I think, for the Golden State Warriors. Between missing out on Paul George yesterday, Klay Thompson, even though I think everybody had a sense that it was headed in this direction for a while, and we'll see if the news breaks here in the time that we're on the air, we'll let everybody know where Klay Thompson is going to be going. But it's almost two different shows here that we want to do. And the first show is Klay Thompson's no longer a member of the Golden State Warriors. And how do you feel about that as a Golden State Warriors fan after 13 seasons and 13 years and 4 championships and 37-point quarters and 60-point games in 29 minutes and Game 6 Klays and all of these things? How do you just feel about the end of the Splash Brothers and the end of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green? Because, and we did about a 90-minute YouTube show at about 3:30 over on the KNBR YouTube channel, Greg Silver and myself. We'll bring in Greg here in just a second. But it's really twofold because it's a sad day. It's an end of an era for the Warriors, as much as we all knew and thought it was coming. And then so we could react to that. But then on the other hand, it's, wow, the Warriors have had a really bad 2 days in terms of Klay is gone. They miss out on Paul George, and Chris Paul is going to the San Antonio Spurs. That news breaking here within the last half an hour, and not going to the San Antonio Spurs because the Warriors picked up his $30 million contract option and are working out a trade to send him to San Antonio that possibly could have netted them some players in return. No, they wound up waiving Chris Paul just after 3:00 because they couldn't figure out a deal to be made with CP3 and another team to potentially take on his contract. So he gets waived, and he's signing for a year and $11 million to go to San Antonio. So using Chris Paul and the contract that they received off of the trade a year ago when they sent Jordan Poole to Washington, that now goes down in the books as a complete salary dump. 1 year of Chris Paul, salary dump on the deal that they signed Jordan Poole to, and he's a member of the San Antonio Spurs. We talked about the Dubs missing out on Paul George. Here's the other part of it. Paul George met with the Clippers. Clippers and Paul George couldn't come to an agreement. Clippers then released a statement as Paul George goes to meet with Philadelphia that he's not coming back to the Clippers. So it looks now, for all intents and purposes, like Paul George is going to be headed to Philadelphia, and that the Sixers, in all likelihood, are going to be a team that's going to be willing to give Paul George the max contract that he desires here for the next 4 seasons, and they're loading up and trying to do some other things there. So it looks like, with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope reportedly going to Orlando and some of the other moves that have gone down, the Clippers, Russell Westbrook had opted in, and they're potentially shipping him to Denver, and everything that's gone on to this point, it looks, although not official, like Klay Thompson is likely headed to the Dallas Mavericks, or at least they are the front runners to sign Klay Thompson. And now the potential holdup in terms of the timing and everything else could be, is that going to be the Warriors doing a sign and trade with Dallas and potentially taking a couple players back from the Mavericks? So it's twofold. It's 808 KNBR, Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Appreciate everybody for reconvening with us here on our second YouTube chat of the day. How do you feel about Klay Thompson no longer being a member of the Warriors? It's a little bit weird because we're all waiting in limbo to see where Klay Thompson is going to go. And then how do you feel about the Warriors' complete and utter whiff yesterday and today? One on Paul George. And look, the other part of that is some of the reporting from Tim Kawakami last night about the Warriors' conversations with the Clippers about Paul George. And Tim wrote that there were some serious negotiations and that the Warriors and Paul George and the Clippers were working through some things, and that the Warriors believe they were on the verge of getting Paul George yesterday. They were going to agree to the max deal. They had proposed different variations of a trade. That's where it gets a little bit murkier as to what the Warriors offered and whether the Clippers didn't accept the Warriors' offer because they didn't feel it was good enough, or whether they just didn't want to do business with the Warriors in losing one of the stars they brought in to try and contend for a championship. So it remains to be seen, and we'll find out, I think, as time goes on. Was Wiggins offered and Moody, or was it Kuminga and others? I think at least one first-round pick is what Tim wrote. But all in all, you look around and the Warriors end up unable, as Paul George opted out yesterday, to acquire him. So miss on Paul George, Klay Thompson out the door, and not only out the door, but out the door potentially for less money than the Warriors reportedly offered him back in the fall. How do you feel about that? I think that's the thing that really is hurting Warrior fans, is the fact that it's not just Klay's going to be in a different uniform, but this thing got so off kilter and out of whack that Klay decided, you know what? I need a fresh start above everything. I need a fresh start, and I don't want to be here anymore. And you guys, meaning the Warriors, should have offered me a big-time contract long ago, and basically saying I needed a legacy contract from you guys. I don't need that from Dallas or Denver or the Lakers or the Clippers or Philly or Orlando or wherever he winds up signing, although, again, it's looking unofficial. Like Dallas right now, according to the reports that are out there, is going to be the team that winds up getting Klay. But immediately 301, it's Chris Haynes, and it's Woj, and it's Shams, and it's everybody. Yeah, Warriors and Klay Thompson moving on. So kind of a sad day, to be perfectly honest. The end of an era, the end of the Splash Brothers, the end of Steph, Klay, and Dre. Again, great times. All good things come to an end. I don't think anybody really saw it coming to an end in the manner that it looks like it is coming to an end. Here's the other part of Chris Paul, going back to that. Chris Haynes reporting earlier. We got a lot of sound to get to. We'll get going here since we got rolling a little bit later than anticipated. We were going to probably do a minimum of an hour. And then, hey, if you like what you hear tonight, we're going to be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock, right here on KNBR. But we're going to play some of the pertinent sound from the afternoon. And so Chris Haynes, and I don't know, Greg, do we have this sound as far as like what the Warriors offer was with the Bulls and everything and all that? Do we have that now? We can set that up for later.
We got it.
Okay. Yeah. So here is, I think, the most let's roll this. This was Chris Haynes right after 3 o'clock as the news had broken late in the 1 o'clock hour, early in the 2 o'clock hour. A lot of the times are running together. The Warriors are just going to waive Chris Paul. They were going to not pick up the $30 million or any part of the $30 million that they could have for Chris Paul. And it looks like the negotiations with, as far as trying to find a team, were a big nothing burger as well. So here's what Haynes had to say.
I want to give some context, some background real quick on what happened with Chris Paul. They wanted to see if Chris Paul would agree to push the guaranteed date back again to give them more time. Chris Paul in this camp, they were not amenable to that. I was told that the Chicago Bulls were trying to get something going with the Golden State Warriors, trying to get a Zach LaVine package together. What I was told, it could have been a Zach LaVine for Chris Paul or Andrew Wiggins. The Warriors, from how it was explained to me, the Warriors, they didn't feel that was an adequate amount for a deal structure. So things didn't go as planned. So that fell through, which led to the Golden State Warriors choosing to release Chris Paul. And I was told it was Mike Dunleavy, the general manager, who called Chris Paul and gave him the news.
Yeah, and then the news was subsequently announced at that point. So Haynes saying there was some engagement with the Bulls, but the Bulls wanted Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins for LaVine. And again, that to me, like I would have hung up the phone on that one as well. I know some Warrior fans are kind of like, that's all it would have taken. Like, you're not giving it to me. If you wanted to do it, and here's where it got tricky, I would have done Chris Paul in a package with some other veteran players to salary match for LaVine in an attempt to just take somebody back for a player that you had no use for. The problem is you're guaranteeing Chris Paul's $30 million then, and Chris Paul didn't want to go to Chicago. And I don't think Chicago wanted to take Chris Paul back at $30 million, pay him, waive him, and go the straight salary dump route. And there's been some other reports indicating throughout the evening that the Bulls are still trying to figure out the best way to offload maybe LaVine and DeRozan, who I think DeRozan's going to maybe end up with the Clippers. But LaVine and DeRozan figure out something, but also not completely go into tank mode. So they didn't want to do, the Warriors didn't want to do Wiggins and Paul for LaVine, which I completely freaking understand. Like that, but that ended, that was it. San Antonio was a team that reportedly earlier had interest in CP3 today. And then that was obviously, we're going to wait the Warriors out and not pay $30 million for a guy who we can play $11 million to. And that's inevitably what wound up happening. So add it all up, and it is a big time whiff for the Golden State Warriors here about 3.5 hours into free agency. Still time to go. We'll see if they wind up doing a sign and trade for Klay Thompson. We'll see if they continue to look to move Andrew Wiggins, although as you've heard me say, and those of you who followed this show and followed the Just Dubs podcast that I do with Greg, I'd be careful just thinking you're going to trade Andrew Wiggins addition by subtraction. or trade him for somebody at another position when you're thus losing your only small forward on the roster and only point of attack defender. But the Warriors are worse today than they were yesterday, than they were Friday. And they got to figure out, because the means by which they can improve are going by the wayside in a big way. Now, no more Klay Thompson, no more Chris Paul, depending upon who they take back for Klay, could open up a mid-level exception, which could be a means to bring in another player. And then we'll turn our attention to whether the Warriors are going to look at packaging Wiggins maybe with somebody like Kuminga or another young player to try to get a number 2 for Steph. That was the top priority on my board for the Warriors, above Klay Thompson, above moving off of Wiggins, above everything. Try to find a number 2 for Steph. And it sounds like they were pretty far down the road with Paul George. It didn't work out. And now they have fewer options to be able to acquire that player. And they look like a team that's almost in a little bit of a soft rebuild, only they still have Steph Curry and Draymond Green and Steve Kerr. And I'm not sure how that all blends in a Western Conference that around them, for the most part, is getting better. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. It is a special Sunday edition of SportsPhone KNBR, our NBA free agency special. We'll go ahead and pause here. We'll hear more of the pertinent sound on the news of the afternoon. We'll bring in Greg Silver as well. And we'll talk to the folks in the YouTube chat. Appreciate everybody, some of you, for the second time today. Again, we did a good 90 minutes to 2 hours at about 3:30 and promised we'd be back at 6. We're a little bit late on that front, but we are back and we are with you and we are ready to talk some free agency and talk about an underwhelming and in many ways kind of sad day for the Golden State Warriors. All right, we'll be back. It is SportsPhone KNBR and KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Speak your mind on the sports leader. SportsPhone KNBR keeps coming at you. Streaming live at twitch.tv/the sports leader.
Gets it to Draymond, down to 5. Klay Thompson at 3. Klay for the win. Good!
I told you. Klay Thompson is still out there. You want to take Steph away and got another killer.
All right, that from November 1st of 2023, Warriors and Kings at Chase. And Klay Thompson with the game winner. Warriors won on that night. We welcome you back. It is SportsPhone KNBR. It's a special Sunday edition here on the Sports Leader as the Warriors and Klay Thompson parting ways as of just about 3 o'clock this afternoon as the NBA free agency period opened. If you want to react to that at 808 KNBR, you certainly can do so. 415-808-5627. We'll get into the YouTube chat. Appreciate people who are watching on YouTube and Twitch and on the KNBR Twitter stream as well. The Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. We'll keep you updated if Klay is signing here at some point during the time that we're on the air. That was the odd part about the whole thing is it was immediately, hey, both Klay and the Warriors are parting ways, but we didn't know where Klay was going. And I know Klay was intending on meeting with some different teams. Been reports about LeBron James taking less to potentially free up a mid-level for Klay to join them. What would Paul George do? Would that impact Klay maybe going to the Clippers or not going to the Clippers? Denver and Dallas have been interested. Orlando showed some interest, but they've gone a different direction with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And then the other interesting one is Philadelphia. The other interesting one is Philadelphia because it looks like they're getting everything lined up to sign Paul George, with the Clippers announcing that they've parted ways and that Paul George won't be coming back to them. So we mentioned this yesterday, the fact that the Sixers have nobody under contract other than Joel Embiid, and they're going to re-sign Tyrese Maxey, but they have a bunch of cap space to where they could sign a few players, and they've signed some middling players and some veteran type guys already this afternoon. Eric Gordon among them. They're lining up to sign these guys. The order in which you sign things, not to get all wonky on the salary cap, but the order in which you sign players is important. So a lot of these are agreements, and then they sign everybody in the right order to where you can maximize everybody for the tax and all the different aprons and all those things. But you wonder, and I said the last couple of days, I think Paul George going to Philadelphia is the best fit for him as a basketball, from a basketball standpoint. Go be basically the number 3 after Embiid and Maxey. And then would Klay Thompson be interested in going there as the 4th option? That would be pretty interesting. And so we'll keep you updated if the news breaks. But everything been pointing toward Dallas throughout the day and the afternoon as to where Klay Thompson would have the potential to be going. And would the Warriors be getting players back in a sign and trade, maybe a Maxi Kleber or a Josh Green or a Jaden Hardy or some combination of those, depending upon the money that Klay would make. Here's the other part. If Klay winds up pivoting to Philadelphia, they got nobody to offer in a sign and trade. So that would be just a straight signing. And the Warriors would lose Chris Paul for nothing, cash savings, and they would lose Klay Thompson for nothing, cash savings. They'd still be at a point where they'd be over the cap, but they'd be at a point where they would also free up a mid-level exception, which could give them a means to sign a player. But a lot of really good players have already come off the board here as everybody gets through that first initial wave of free agency. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. That's the nuts and bolts of it. There's also the sentimental end of an era component to it. And we bring in Greg Silver, fine producer and co-host of this program and our Just Dubs shows and podcast and our Dubs OT shows here on the Sports Leader. And I bring you in on this note because you're a lifelong Warrior fan. Now, you're a young guy, but you grew up being a fan of this team as this team grew up and won not one, but 2 and 3. And then eventually a couple of years ago, their 4th championship. And so having Klay Thompson and the Warriors have their relationship end in the fashion that it is ending, I think you speak to the pulse of a Warrior fan today. So I wanted to give you that opportunity. How you doing, my friend?
It's good. I'm worried we haven't talked enough in the last couple of days. We haven't really exchanged many texts or gotten to spend time together on a screen. No, I'm joking.
Well, we're going to do it more tomorrow too. So if we might just do the same. We might just record this show and like replay it tomorrow at 6:00.
Yeah, there we go.
At least a chunk of it.
Oldest trick in the book. No, and listen, in all seriousness, I did miss getting to do our Dubs carousel. Felt a little empty sometimes, so it's good to be back. But yeah, this is a really weird day. Really, really weird. And I know I touched on this in the YouTube chat, and just the fact that they're not getting Paul George and looking to make one last run in the last chapter of Steph Curry's prime and what's left of Draymond Green, and Klay Thompson is departing in that act, and it's going to be weird and it's going to be different. They are losing Klay Thompson and parting ways with him, and we don't know what to make of this team right now. And certainly with the way the last couple of days have gone, this offseason has gone, I can't say it's cause for a whole lot of optimism, and that they haven't necessarily gotten much better from where they were. And listen, I don't know what to expect. I know I can't speak on behalf of every other Warriors fan, so I'm not trying to carry the torch for what everybody's feeling. I think that's kind of what's really cool about the sports experience is, yeah, I grew up with this team, and I got to experience a little bit of those early Oracle days and the drought and the We Believe team. And the first game I ever went to, it was a birthday present, and they lost to the Allen Iverson, Carmelo Anthony, young J.R. Smith Nuggets, and it knocked them out of the playoffs, and I cried. And then gotten to carry a lot of those memories with me into my high school years when the team reached heights I never thought it would. Got to carry it down to Santa Barbara, California, where I got to spend 5 years and hang out around a lot of Lakers and some Clipper fans too. Then I got to be back here and start working at KNBR, and I'm super fortunate for that, and getting to work with you, obviously, and, change my perspective a little bit on how I look at the team, kind of my relationship with all of that. And I think when I look at kind of this next chapter, I look at the team in a much more professional light and try to look at it in a much more objective light. But the strange thing about starting up Dubs OT and just Dubs is I can't just let go entirely of some of the players that I grew up with. And Klay Thompson is absolutely one of those core components. I didn't go to sleep till 1 a.m. last night, 1 p.m. Not doing the overnight shift. I didn't go to sleep till like 1 last night, just looking at all the Klay videos, some of the ones that come to the top of your mind when you think of great Klay Thompson memories, and some of them that maybe are a little bit more forgotten. So, look, the phone lines are open. Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line is also open. So this isn't the Greg Silver as a producer of Dub shows shares what it's like for him. But I hope that just my experience of getting to tap into Oakland and then the move to San Francisco and these players and getting to see bad teams and then the best regular season team of all time and 5 straight finals and 4 championships. I hope that's cause for people willing to just relive some of the good memories, because I can't say I'm looking at the next year right now with a whole lot of optimism. And it's the shock factor that's still kind of setting in. But yeah, I never really thought this day was going to come. I thought it was a realistic possibility that Steph, Klay, and Draymond all finished their careers with one team.
And I think you would have also thought, within the last few years that Klay would not have been the first one to go, which I think is the other part of this. I think, at times it was trending toward Draymond. I don't think anybody thinks it was going to be Steph, but I think a lot of people thought it would have been Draymond Green. So yeah, people filing into the YouTube chat. Rockin' New Era 84, appreciate you, and we'll try to get to as many people as possible. Klay taking a discount somewhere else would add salt to the wound. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it looks like Klay for sure is going to take less than the 2-year, $48 million offer that was reported that the Warriors had on the table for him going back to the fall and the beginning of the season. So for him to not only almost tell the Warriors, hey, you got to give me the legacy contract or I'm not sticking around. If all things are equal, I'm going somewhere else and taking a minimum or taking a mid-level. I think that's a scenario that nobody would have saw coming, but I think it also speaks to, as Tim Kawakami wrote about a little bit last night, it speaks to how much Klay Thompson did not enjoy last season. And he's in his end of year press conference talking about mental health and the future and trying to get his mind right. And, all things that make you wonder if even in that vein, he was leading, toward a potential fresh start. And that's been spoken to more in some reporting here of late. But regardless, if you're a Warrior fan, I think as tough as today would have been under any circumstances, it's more difficult to take if you're a Warriors fan because he's potentially taking less. And also because you look at the Warriors missing now on Paul George, getting nothing back for Chris Paul, and in wait and see mode as to where Klay Thompson goes. And if where Klay Thompson goes allows the Warriors to get something back. So it feels like it's really 2 or 3-fold the pain in a lot of ways, and the acceptance that this team really, as much as a lot of people were frustrated with them the last couple of years, they're worse right now. They may do some things that make themselves better, but they are worse right now than they were on April 16th and then they were on June 28th, which is a couple of years ago, or a couple of nights ago. Feels like a couple of years ago because we've been on the air so much, Greg.
And you look at the Boston Celtics and all the 3-point shooting power they had, and they had a bunch of guys that could really sling it. And when you look at the Warriors, I mean, Steph had 357 threes last year. Klay had 268. And Wiggins, Podziemski, Moody, Kuminga combined to make 306. Now, I know minutes weren't always equal in spread and shot volume, but it goes to show it's an area they were lacking, and now they're lacking even more.
Yeah, they already needed shooting. And now they need more shooting because they're going to lose Klay Thompson's shooting. And so how do you replace? I mean, that's another part of it. How do you replace that in addition to everything else? Julian in the chat feels bad seeing Klay Thompson go somewhere else. Wish him well and thank him for everything he did here. But it would be very foolish to give Klay $30 million a year for how he plays now. I agree. I agree with that. I said that. It's funny. The Warriors read the Klay Thompson market correctly. And unfortunately for them, they're getting burned a little bit for having read it correctly. Because them reading it correctly pissed him off. It pissed him off. So he in many ways showed him the door, which makes this whole thing, I think, a lot worse. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go out to Michael in Mountain View on the Sports Leader. Hey, Michael.
Hey, Larry. How are you doing today?
Yeah, it's JD. It's JD. But how are you?
JD. Sorry about that. I apologize.
No worries, my man.
What do you think the Warriors have to do to be smart, to be a talented team? Smart and practical. And maybe it's smart, but not just take a gamble and try to home run.
Well, I think they have to be open to. I mean, smart and practical is going to be mediocre and underwhelming. Like I think, and I've said this the last couple of days. Like if they're going to say, hey, there's no big move to make, then they, I think, are setting themselves up to not be a very good team this next year. in a Western Conference that has teams that are getting better. Now, I think in ordinary circumstances, and I'll just level with you, under ordinary circumstances, a team that has had the 2 days that the Warriors have had to this point would be talking about tearing the whole thing down to the studs. Now, the Warriors are not going to do that and just completely focusing on the young players and development and all of that. The Warriors are not going to do that with Stephen Curry still on the roster. So, and with Draymond Green and Steve Kerr still around. So they really are truly in a pickle because they have Steph and they have Draymond and they still have Wiggins. So I think they're trying to figure out if they potentially move him. But as I've said a lot, if you move him for somebody at a different position or for a problem, a player in his own right, you might lose your best on-ball defender and your only true 3 small forward on the team, and you could be worse for that. Even though I think a lot of people are fed up with Wiggins, I think they have to look at what Wiggins and Kuminga could do to try and get a number 2 around Steph and see who they can get back for Klay Thompson. But even that now you feel not as great about because they have to fill out the roster in other areas, and there are means by which they can acquire players that have gone by the wayside, like the ability to take somebody back for Chris Paul. That's gone. We'll see what Klay does. That could potentially be gone depending upon where he goes. So the whole thing got a lot more difficult in the last 24 to 48 hours, Michael.
Am I correct to say that if we trade Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga and get one player, we're banking on that one player to be the superhero? Am I correct about saying that? Am I wrong about that?
I don't know about that. I just don't know that they're it's not the superhero, but it's in today's NBA, you got to have 2 guys. You got to have a 1 and a 2 in terms of pecking order. And the Warriors don't have the second guy. They have the first guy, even though he's getting older in Steph Curry, but they don't have the second guy. And so to me, you have to look at, can you get that second guy for Wiggins and maybe Kuminga? Obviously, Wiggins alone wouldn't do it. I mean, that's where you're talking about maybe Levine's. And again, I know that Tim Kawakami reporting was that the Bulls wanted Wiggins and Chris Paul for Levine. And it's like, no way. Like, I get why the Warriors didn't do that. But but no, it's can you find somebody that can be that bona fide second best player? And then you have to figure out ways to fill in the roster off of that. So save your no. And again, that doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be a contender either, Michael. You might not be a contender, but it gives you a better chance to get out of this dreck that they were in the last couple of years, and give them a fighting chance to see how good or great Steph Curry can lead them to be here this season.
Is it better to play for the play young, get young players for the future, or is it better to play to win now? Look, I'm win now, Michael. I'm win now. And I'm win now because you still have Steph Curry. Thank you, Michael, for the call. Some good questions. Thank you very much. Yeah, appreciate you kicking it around with me here on KNBR, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627, as it is KNBR 104.5 and 680 San Francisco, the sports leader, as we get you to the 7 o'clock hour here, awaiting some potential breaking news, possibly as to where exactly Klay Thompson is going to be going. Looks like Paul George is headed to Philadelphia. And Chris Paul, we know, is going to San Antonio after the Warriors waived him, did not pick up the $30 million contract option. Here's an interesting
Mason Plumlee is
note.
going to the Suns.
Yeah, and here's another interesting note. And so Woj reporting Najee Marshall is going to the Dallas Mavericks on a 3-year, $27 million deal. So that takes some of what the Mavericks had available away. So it makes you wonder what that leaves for Klay Thompson in terms of money and whether it's a sign and trade or not. But that one just popping up here, Najee Marshall, 3-year, $27 million deal with the Dallas Mavericks. So yeah, that could be maybe Dallas looking to pivot in a different manner. Obviously, different position, different skill set with Najee Marshall, but some money that the Mavs had freed up now going away there.
Yeah, definitely is interesting. Sorry, I just got lost in the storm of possible news, but nothing more exciting since the Mason Plumlee to the Suns news. So,
nothing more exciting there. All right, 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Our buddy Douglas Mikes as Dallas continues to load up on wings with Najee Marshall, continuing to load up there. So we'll see. Now, does that mean Josh Green ends up being somebody that could be available if they end up getting Klay Thompson? Douglas Mikes, though, Warriors so far have passed on or missed on Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Alex Caruso, DeJounte Murray, Paul George. Just saying. Well, I don't know. Some of those deals, I think you gotta look at as weren't the best, possible options for Golden State. And other ones I don't think were like, I think some of it is revisionist history. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick timeout. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. We will pause. We'll come back. More of your phone calls straight ahead, as it is a special edition of SportsPhone KNBR and the Sports Leader.
Klay Thompson! Giants fans, this is your hub to have your voice heard. SportsPhone KNBR. Streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
And now it is 11th NBA season out of Washington State University. Number 11, Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson's return Jan 9, 2022 against Cleveland, as the Warriors would go on to win the NBA championship just a couple of years ago. And here we are, June 30 of 2024. And something about these Sunday afternoons on June 30, go back to 2019. That was when the Warriors lost Kevin Durant. They were able to quickly pivot and wind up with a sign and trade that actually proved to be extremely beneficial. Kevin Durant wound up turning into D'Angelo Russell, who turned into Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. Warriors won a title because of their ability to do a sign and trade as Durant walked out the door. Can the Warriors come up with something similar? Probably not with Klay Thompson going out the door. We'll see where Klay Thompson goes. But the big question on the board here is, can the Warriors do something to get a number 2 player? 808 KNBR, the number, as we await where Klay Thompson will go. Chris Paul's going to be a San Antonio Spur. Looks like Paul George is headed to Philadelphia. And what do the Lakers and Clippers wind up doing? We got a couple of clips to get to here from ESPN discussing where the Warriors go and just how things got so far out of whack between the Warriors and Klay Thompson. We'll have those for you coming up in just a moment. But let's continue. Oh, I got to go back to my board here on the phones with PJ in Daly City on the Sports Leader. Hey, PJ.
What's up, JD? What's good, Greg? How you guys doing?
We're doing well, man. We're doing well. What's on your mind tonight?
Basically, when I heard Franco Finn introduce Klay Thompson on that clip, I got chills. I'm devastated. You see what I'm saying? Klay was supposed to retire a Warrior. I'm absolutely devastated. That game that you talked about, the January 9 where he came back, that's the best dunk ever. He crossed up Jarrett Allen, and then it was between that Allen and Markkanen sandwich. Boy, I tell you, Klay was supposed to retire a Warrior. You feel me, JD?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that made the Warriors special, was that they had the stars and that the stars were all connected together, and it was something special here, and they were all going to finish their careers together here. And so I think to have it be soured so quickly to the point where he winds up potentially, and we don't know yet, but potentially taking less money to go somewhere else, it's in some ways.
Don't you say it.
It's stunning. It's stunning, PJ. What did you think I was going to say?
Because this is what happened today, man. All right. So we found out that KCP went to Orlando, and Klay loves boating. So we were like, okay, Orlando's going to be cool. You know what I'm saying? He's going to go out and boat in Orlando, be a Magic. He's going to be good. But KCP took that over. And then we find out that Najee Marshall decides to go to Mavericks, right? So that kind of takes that out of the picture. You see what I'm saying? The next 2 teams that are available are in Los Angeles. I'm okay with the Clippers, but don't you dare say the Lakers. You see what I'm saying, JD? Not the Lakers. Please, not the Lakers.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Well, you know what, PJ, thank you for the call. 808 KNBR, PJ's line open. I think that is where a lot of Warrior fans are. They're in the 5 stages of grief, right, Greg? It's the 5 stages of grief. And I think it's denial. This can't possibly be happening, right? It's anger. I think we've seen a lot of that the last couple of days. It's bargaining. Just don't let him go to the Lakers. Go to Orlando. Go to Orlando. Go to Philly. Go somewhere else. And then eventually you get to depression. You get sad about it. And I think a lot of Warrior fans are sad about it. I think that's where Greg is at this point. I think Greg's in the depression phase. And then
yeah, but PJ did make me feel a little bit better. That was the energy I needed in my Sunday boost here.
Which part made you feel better?
Talking about Klay's dunk, little Markkanen sandwich, crossing up Jarrett Allen.
Yeah, no, that was big. No, that was big time. You're right. That was big time. And that's the thing. There are so many great memories of Klay Thompson that Warrior fans are going to, because I know this will be the next phase of things. Like, everybody's so frustrated about it all happening at once, right? The Warriors are declining on the court right now, and they're losing Klay Thompson. But again, and it's going to be awkward, and it's tough. But the truth is, there is going to come a point in the near future, let's say the next 3 to 4 years, where Klay Thompson's career is going to be over. And he's going to be welcomed back to Chase Center, and they're going to retire number 11, and there may be even a statue at some point out in front of the building, and it's going to be Steph, and it's going to be Klay, and it's going to be Draymond, and it's going to be Steve Kerr and everybody else. And you're going to think of the 37-point quarter, and you're going to think of him crossing dudes over and hitting 10 threes in a game 6. And you're going to think of the 60-point game against Indiana when he did it in 29 minutes. Like, you're going to be thinking of all of those things. So I think, it's sad now. It's hard now. It's anger now. But Klay Thompson, once all of that subsides, is going to be remembered nothing but fondly by Warrior fans. I mean, he'll bring not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 titles to the Bay, and a part of the best backcourt in NBA history.
I was at Brett Favre's induction speech into the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Actually, it's the only time I ever was out in Canton, Ohio. And that was a strange experience too, because you did see some Favre Viking jerseys. And at the time when he walked out in that purple and got booze from Lambeau, that had to be one of the most surreal experiences for anyone there. But he kind of talked about it and said, make no mistake, I'll be remembered as a Green Bay Packer. And it overwhelmingly was a lot of green and yellow in the crowd that night.
Here's the latest, and this is with the Najee Marshall signing by Dallas. They've agreed to terms with Najee Marshall to a 3-year, $27 million contract. This via Bobby Marks of ESPN. So he's got the projected Dallas roster, and then the Klay Thompson scenario Bobby Marks lays out now as things currently stand with the Mavs cap situation. They have to move off of $13 million in salary. That's one way they can sign Klay Thompson without help. The second way is a sign and trade with Golden State. So they could do a sign and trade with Golden State. So it's looking more and more, and maybe Dallas knew that they had the sign and trade option with Golden State in their back pocket. And so it's a scenario where now they can use that, and we'll figure out who's coming back to the Warriors, and as far as that goes. So just keeping you updated on the latest there as we move forward here into the 7:00 hour. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's keep it going on the phone lines with Don in San Francisco here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Don.
How are you doing tonight?
Oh, doing okay. Just trying to process everything.
Yeah, I know. It's just like a weight. I'm talking about a weight. Like if we don't, when I get Klay Thompson made look like not coming back, we Paul George is out of the deal. So we did not get nothing. We lost right there, did we? We lost.
Yeah, they're worse. Yeah, for sure. They're definitely worse for it right now.
Yeah. Any other something can come up, do something else. I mean, anything else they can do.
Well, yeah, thanks, Don. The question right now, and Don's line open at 808 KNBR, the question right now is, can they cobble something together to go get a second best player? Can they figure out that's not going to be in any return from Dallas for Klay Thompson? That much I think we know. And look, some of the names didn't exactly make people happy. Although I think with some of the people, Greg, that the Mavs have signed, and some of the maybe they are going to be more willing to move off of Josh Green. I know I mentioned Maxi Kleba, but I wasn't anticipating them going and getting Najee Marshall either. So maybe there is a pathway toward Josh Green, because Josh Green is signed for a few more years. So maybe he does wind up being in that deal as opposed to a guy like Maxi Kleba. But stay tuned, as they say. It'd be nice. And also stay tuned. But again, that doesn't move the needle in terms of Josh Green's not a second best player, right? He's a young backup, wing player who can shoot the three ball.
Hey, I'm looking for anything right now. Okay.
And Mark Stein of Substack now, but the longtime NBA reporter, says, according to his sources, that Dallas does remain focused on securing a commitment from Klay Thompson and completing a sign and trade that lands Thompson into the Tim Hardaway Jr. trade exception. The Mavs' hope was that they still had a path to be able to do that. So now we'll see if they are able to do that. Up next, Mark and Milbrae. Back to it here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Mark.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's going on tonight, my man? Hey, what's up, Mark? Yeah, we got you.
It was writing was on the wall when he rejected that. Him and Klay and his agent rejected that offer. I think, honestly, as much as I love Klay, he's my favorite Warrior. I think that was a more than fair offer. 2 years, $48 million for a declining player. To me, at this point, Klay is more of like a $15 million player. So I think he's gonna, out of spite now, I would be shocked if he goes anywhere other than Lakers. I think his father, Michael Thompson, who obviously calls the games for the Lakers, is convincing him to take less. And Warrior fans, you better deal with it. He doesn't want to play in Dallas. I highly doubt he wants to play with Luka. He's made some comments previously in the past about, not really being a fan of Luka. So to me, I would be shocked if he goes anywhere other than the Lakers. And the Warrior fans, man, we might as well deal with it. And hey, I can't hate on him. If he wants to take less to play in LA for his hometown team with his father calling his games, you can't hate on it. But the Warriors, I think, gave him a more than fair offer. So, it's more times than not in sports, it's very, very rare. How many players actually retire with the team they were drafted? Outside of Curry, I don't see any other player, even Draymond, probably retiring as a lifetime Warrior. Kobe, Dirk, there's very few players who do it. So I just salute Klay on an incredible run, brought 4 titles, best backcourt duo of this, definitely of this era. And it was great to watch. And hey, sometimes business gets in the way. I think Klay, if he would have checked his ego, I think him and his agent would have found out that was a great deal. You could have retired with Curry, but hey, he feels he was disrespected, and his agent. So hey, tip of the cap to him. As far as now pivoting for the Warriors, I'm hearing. I haven't heard a guy that I like. He's an older guy, but I still think he's a very protected player. To me, I think a guy like DeMar DeRozan, he can give you 25. Yeah. He can play off Curry. I think he's probably as good as you can do because it's slim pickings out there. Lauri Markkanen doesn't do it for me. What are your thoughts? I'd look at a guy like DeRozan who can come in and he can give you 25 to 30 a game. He can take the scoring load off Curry, and I think he's a guy who can come in. He's a pro. He's an ultimate pro. He doesn't get hurt. So if I'm the Warriors, I'm looking at him, and I think he'll take a little less being an older guy. What are your thoughts, JD, in terms of that? Because other than that, there's nobody really out there who I really look at that's better than him.
Yeah, it's interesting. DeRozan is, and thank you for the call. A lot of really good points there. And yeah, you're right. Klay can do whatever Klay wants to do. By the way, there was a quick Woj quote, Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN. LeBron James, he was told, called Klay Thompson right when free agency opened at 6 p.m. Eastern. So again, he didn't sign, but LeBron in his quest to get Klay Thompson to be a member of the Lakers and having the potential to take less, called Klay right there. Yet DeRozan is interesting. I like DeRozan's on the books for well, actually, wait a minute. Where's DeRozan is what is DeRozan's deal? Is DeRozan's a free agent now? Let's see. Well, yeah, they can't get DeRozan if he's a free agent. What is that, Greg? Is that correct? The board that I brought up has DeRozan as a free agent.
Yeah, I think so.
24. Yeah, for some reason I thought he had one more year left on his deal, but yeah, I guess I guess it is DeMar DeRozan DeMar DeRozan. Well, they can't get DeMar DeRozan because they'd have to be able to have enough cap space to be able to sign him. So yeah, DeMar DeRozan's not going anywhere. I could see DeMar DeRozan maybe going to the Clippers now that Paul George is not going to be coming back to the Clippers. So I again, for some reason, and I apologize, there's a lot of different notes and numbers on players that I had for in my head. For some reason, I had DeMar DeRozan as a guy who had one more year left on his deal, but no, he's among the free agents. And I know it was reported that he's looking to wait and see what happens with Paul George and the Clippers, because I think he has the potential to want to go home and play for LA. So yeah, DeRozan would be great and a nice fit. But yeah, not maybe happening there as he becomes a free agent. 808 KNBR, Omar in Oakland next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Omar.
What's up, JB?
What's going on, my man? How you been?
Very good, very good.
What's on your mind?
Why can't we get people like a player like Zach LaVine, or why did we end up waiving Chris Paul if we're in dire need of a guard?
Well, they didn't want to pay him $30 million, number one, and he didn't want to be with the Warriors in the role that he had this past season. So I think part of what happened with Chris Paul was they got caught up trying to do right by him because they paid him for the 1 year and accepted the role that maybe he wasn't totally happy with, and was a professional and a good teammate and liked his time with the organization. But he made it clear in his conversations with the Warriors that he would prefer not to do that again this season. So I don't think they were ever going to bring him back to the Warriors under any circumstances. As far as the $30 million option and picking it up and trying to trade him for a player or players that you could get back, that's the part where I thought it was a no-brainer to try and get creative and make something happen there. And so to let that go by the wayside is a whiff. But I do think the other thing you have to look at is somebody else willing to pay him that? And I think the rest of the league really, they called the Warriors bluff and didn't want to take it on. And so the Warriors were stared with, are we going to keep him at $30 million, even though he didn't want to be here? Or are we just going to deal him somewhere and let that team potentially waive him and all of that? And the reporting earlier from Chris Haynes was that the Bulls were maybe willing to do something with Chris Paul for LaVine, but it would also include Andrew Wiggins. And that was their preferred method to match salaries, to have it be Paul and Wiggins. I think they would have probably waived Paul, but they wanted Wiggins in that scenario. And for the Warriors to do that, to me, that's a no-brainer to not do. So I think that was a tough ask for the Warriors, who said no, and then it left them hanging on the whole Chris Paul part of it. So they wind up waiving him. He winds up signing in San Antonio for a third of that $30 million, and the Warriors wind up with nothing to show for it.
And what offers do you think Klay Thompson's going to get somewhere else? Like, if we already offered him a great deal, what else would he get?
Well, he didn't think it was a great deal, unfortunately. I mean, and this is the part that I think, and we were talking about this at the top of the hour and the top of the segment. I think, Klay, for whatever reason, wanted more from the Warriors than he potentially will take from another team. And so I think he's in that mid-level. I think he's going to be right around 15 a year, anywhere between 13 and about 15, 16 a year. The Warriors' offer going back to the fall was, it was 24 per year. But again, the 24 per year for the Warriors, I think he wanted to be, more like 30 a year for, with the Warriors. So I think, and he thought that they owed him that for everything that he's brought to the table. Also, Woj reporting here just within the last couple of minutes that Klay Thompson will not be making a decision on his next team tonight. Will not. The Clippers, Lakers, Mavs, and Sixers, all contenders for Klay Thompson, and he was scheduled to be meeting with those teams today. But yeah, Woj reporting that Klay will not be making a decision tonight. So stay tuned, Omar, moving forward there. That obviously impacts whether the Warriors can get players back for Klay Thompson as well. Thanks, Omar. I don't think he's staying. That much I think we know. That much I think we know. 808 KNBR. We'll get to Irv. We'll get to Eric. We'll sneak in Andrea here coming up. Let's go ahead and pause. We'll come back. We'll keep it going till 8 o'clock. We got a couple of clips to get to, and then we'll reconvene tomorrow. So it is Sports Phone. It's a special Sunday edition. 808 KNBR reacting to the news about Klay Thompson and where do the Warriors go from here on the Sports Leader.
Oh no! We suck again!
This is where we feed the faithful. SportsPhone, KNBR. Streaming live at twitch.tv/the Sports Leader.
Draymond Green has it. Finds Thompson. Thompson fakes. Puts up a three.
Klay Thompson ties the game with 5.9 remaining.
All right, welcome back. Final segment here on a Sunday. No news on Klay Thompson as far as where he's going to go tonight. Dallas involved, the Lakers, the Clippers, Philadelphia. Paul George officially not going to Philadelphia yet, but he's not going back to the Clippers, and there's really nowhere else he can go. Orlando, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Najee Marshall going to Dallas. The Mavs still have a traded player exception that they can fold Klay Thompson into. But Woj of ESPN reporting here within the last 10 minutes or so that no decision coming as to where Klay Thompson will go, but we know he is not coming back to the Warriors. So at this point, it's all about the memories, and that one of the better ones from the 2023-24 season as the Warriors tied the game, the double OT game. The Warriors ended up losing back on January 27th at Chase Center against the Lakers. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. Back to the phones we go, and that's Eric in San Francisco next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Eric.
Hey, JD.
What's going on?
Couple points. One thing, just about an appreciation for what we saw. I first fell in love with the Warriors when my dad took me to see the Celtics in '85 when he had season tickets. And I first got season tickets to the Warriors in 2002 with my friends when I graduated college. And just watching like the last, basically from when they first made the playoffs in, 2012 and 13, and Oracle was as loud as I've ever seen a sporting event ever be in that series against the Nuggets. It's just been a really great ride. And it's been really cool to be able to take my 6-year-old to the 2022 finals. So like, I'm really grateful for like the team in general. So I think that's something we just need to appreciate as fans. Just off the top, we've been blessed the last 10 years. And in regards to Klay, it's sad that it's kind of become somewhat acrimonious and that it seems like he's actually taking less money than what was offered this morning. But I get it from both sides, which is kind of, I think it's actually in some ways better for both sides, because I think Klay was trying so hard to prove to the fans that he was still the player that he was, that he would get into those ruts and he'd get into those 0 for 10 Kings games were at the end of last season, where he's just trying to, it's kind of like you're digging yourself deeper and faster the harder you try and dig your way out. So I think it's probably best. I really hope he doesn't go to the Lakers, just because that would just be a bummer, but I would understand from his perspective to play for his dad's team would be awesome. And in regards to the team moving forward, I just look at it as I watched the Celtics and then the Lakers and then obviously the end of the Bulls and then the Lakers again and the Heat. And it's like, this is just kind of how these things end. They run their course. Maybe some are a little more graceful than others. And maybe, the Lakers caught fire with Shaq and Kobe in '96. Otherwise, what have they really done since Magic left? And the Celtics, until they won in this past year, won one title. So I hope we don't have that kind of run. But in some ways, I think it's better just because, as Mark Cuban said, the worst place in the NBA is to be in the middle. And I think if we try and trade our future assets to maybe win a round or two, I think that really sets the franchise back like 10 years. So I don't really see a way out other than to say, we drafted poorly with the Wiseman pick and there was some bad roster management and it's come back to bite us. But I, for one, am really grateful for the run we had.
Well, I think that the last part's a great way to look at it. And thanks, Eric. Appreciate the call. here on SportsPhone KNBR special Sunday edition here on the Sports Leader. Look, I think you definitely want to be appreciative of the run and all of that. The concern that I would have moving forward is under normal circumstances, if you don't have a Steph Curry and a Draymond Green on the roster, it'd be very easy considering the events of the last couple of days. You would just tear the whole thing down. Well, the Warriors are not going to do that. So I think, unfortunately, they're caught in the middle. Like, they can't do the full-blown rebuild right now because they still have Steph, who's the major driver of revenue and the major reason people watch and are excited about this team on a nightly basis. What's Steph going to do? And he's still playing at an exceptionally high level. And so I think having him still where he is and having Draymond and having Steve Kerr around, and then you have all these young guys and you've got Wiggins who you're underwhelmed with and maybe trade. It just, I think you're still too close to the middle to where I would be more apt to try to make a move that tries to keep it together. And if you fall flat on your face in making a move that tries to keep it together, and then you have to go into more of a full rebuild, well, you're going into more of a full rebuild at that point in a couple of years. But you'd be doing that anyway in a couple of years. So to me, that's why it's worth the risk. The problem, though, now is you're running out of options to pull a rabbit out of the hat and come up with that number 2 option, because that's really what we're talking about. All right, Irv in Berkeley next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Irv.
Hey, how you doing? The Klay Thompson, Klay Thompson got paid a lot of money for not playing well the last few years. But I was trying to see, why didn't the Warriors pull the trade for with Chicago?
They didn't want to give up Wiggins and Chris Paul for Levine, which I understand that. That doesn't make you better. Like Chris Paul was gone no matter what. I get that part of it. And maybe the Warriors would have got a pick coming back. But Wiggins and Paul, like, to me, you make that move for Chris Paul and a couple of other dudes who are not involved in your future plans, and you're helping them out because Levine's such a sunk cost, nobody wants to trade for him. You don't need to give up Wiggins and Levine at that point. So to me, that was not – I wouldn't have done that part either, but reportedly that's what it was. It was the Bulls wanted Wiggins and Chris Paul. And another part of it, I think, was the fact that Chris Paul didn't necessarily want to go to Chicago and go through the process of having to get waived and all of that because he had something lined up with San Antonio.
Okay. And then the next thing, I saw that Drummond was available, and I don't know the New Orleans Pelicans center. So those guys both signed. One signed for $10 million. The other one signed for like, wait. Drummond
went to Philly.
Million. Yeah, so his was $5 million a year, and then you have the guy that was in New Orleans, the Pelicans center. He signed. He's going to get $10 million a year. The Warriors couldn't have put Looney out there in like a sign-in trade for him, and then they cut whoever wanted, cut him and go from there.
Yeah, the Warriors couldn't do any kind of sign and trade where they're taking somebody back that was a free agent because then that would have changed their so anybody that was a free agent, they couldn't do that. They can do it with Klay. Yeah. So and Valanciunas was the other one who signed. Valanciunas ended up going to the Wizards on a deal. So, it goes from the Pelicans to the Wizards on the deal. But, they wouldn't be able to take a player that was a free agent back. So, appreciate you, man.
All right, thank you.
Yep, appreciate it, Irv. Sunflower next on the Sports Leader. Hey, Sunflower.
Hey, JD, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. Tough night for Warrior fans. Tough weekend, really, for Warrior fans. But we're all kind of getting through it. What's on your mind as far as Klay goes?
Well, so I don't know if I'm going to help. I'm not a Warrior fan. I wanted to chime in on a couple things. And look, I try and be about as impartial as it comes. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. I'm actually a New York fan as well of a couple teams.
Sure.
So we're about as cynical as they come. I want to remind all Bay Area fans, especially Warrior fans, about the whole don't take it personal. Look, I agree. Klay shouldn't take his contract personal. He shouldn't take the idea that the Warriors didn't give him max personal. It's a business. But it works the other way as well. In other words, if Klay leaves for less money, even less than the Warriors gave him, the Warrior fans can't get mad. And here's why. He could turn around and say, I wanted to play with Luka, and I wanted to go play with Kyrie, who, let's be fair, they have a better world, and they were in the finals this past year. So I could justify him taking less to go play for Dallas. Now, I mean, if he went to the Lakers for less, that's a hard one. But my question to you for the night, how appealing is it to play for a Steph Curry? How appealing is it to play with a LeBron James? Like, if you were to ask me, and I'm not a basketball player, but if you were to ask me, you want to go play with Luka for the next decade and take your chances winning a title? Or do you want to go see out Curry and LeBron's little swan song, final rides? I don't know how appealing it is for a player in the middle of his prime. I understand that Klay's a little bit more on the back end, but I don't know if it's appealing. I don't know if they have that draw like they used to. I remember when they got Durant, no problem. That was an easy one. I don't think they have that same pull. Anyway, I'll take the answer off air. I really appreciate it.
No, and thank you for the call. No, I'll say this. I think, and somebody had texted me something similar. They said, hey, Luka I could get. You want to go play with Luka? He's young. They were just in the finals. You can help. You're going to be a third, fourth, fifth option. The Lakers, this person said, and they were not a Warrior fan either, but they said, hey, the Lakers, that would be more spite. That would be more trying to put salt in the wound. I didn't even disagree. I didn't even agree with that necessarily because of the, going to the Lakers and growing up a Laker fan and his dad and all that, playing for the Lakers and broadcasting still for the Lakers. So I almost saw the Lakers as a mulligan for Klay. But no, I think it goes to a bigger picture point, which is the fact that the Warriors are no longer the it team. And Steph is getting a little older. And, the term I used earlier is, in Klay's mind, it was almost as if he wanted the legacy pay. He wanted the pay, he wanted the pay closer to what Draymond and Steph were getting to basically still be around and still stick it out. As opposed to maybe taking less. I think the fans think of it as, it's so great here. It's been so great here. I'm taking less here. And Klay looked at it the opposite way. He looked at it as being disrespected, which is his right. It's his prerogative. And I can understand from a basketball standpoint, him wanting a fresh start. Sometimes you just want a fresh start in life, in a career. I mean, I can understand that, actually, believe it or not. So, I think it's tough to process. I think if you're a Warrior fan at times, but I also think, maybe he feels he has to change it up because he doesn't want to be the same guy that he's been the last couple of years, because he wore it. And we can talk about the attitude and all those things, and I pointed him out the last couple of days. But maybe in his mind, he thinks, I got to get away from this situation where I'm constantly compared to what I was. And when I still put up numbers that are close to those in some ways to the numbers he put up before, everybody's disappointed in them still. Because I think it goes back to last year. And Greg, I know we're going to play the cut here from Kendra Andrews, and I think this is a nice segue into playing that. And we'll play the Zach Lowe cut as well. But, I think part of this thing for Klay was, he made over 300 threes last season, 22-23, bad end against the Lakers, tired down the stretch, all those things. And I think he was really frustrated that the notion was that he had a bad year. And then they pay Draymond. And then he's thinking, well, wait a minute, you pay Draymond. So here's what Kendra Andrews of ESPN had to say about how last summer left a bad taste in Klay Thompson's mouth leading into this past season.
Yeah, we have to flip back pretty much a whole calendar year, really, to last summer when the Warriors and Klay could have first come to a new agreement, gotten him a new deal, and avoided this entire situation, but it didn't happen. And I'm told the way that last summer played out left a sour taste in Klay's mouth. The thing that has been repeated to me over and over and over again by so many different people is Klay wants to feel respected. He wants to feel appreciated. He wants to feel valued. And how last summer went down, he didn't feel that way. So he enters the year already a little bit unhappy. He starts the year off playing poorly. He eventually gets moved to the bench. His role for the rest of the season is bopping all around. Meanwhile, the contract negotiations, nothing moved from the summer. All the while, Malika, he had a hard time adjusting to his game and his body after those two really difficult injuries a couple years ago.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, I think that tells the story, Greg, I think as much as anything. I mean, he wanted, but again, it's about desire and payment. That's the big thing. He wanted to be aligned with Steph, I think, and Draymond, especially Draymond, who punched a teammate and basically sabotaged last season and got paid. Klay Thompson's thinking, I made 306 3-pointers at a 40% clip, and everybody's acting like I was the freaking problem. Like,
welcome back to the Warriors Invitational, baby.
I think that was in some ways part of this deal.
Oh, yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. Klay was mostly available this season and just inconsistent. Draymond Green was not always available for things that he could theoretically control. So I think it makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't imagine that Steph's money or situation probably rubbed Klay too much the wrong way. I mean, Steph was kind of always going to be the one that they were going to covet the most and want to not have go anywhere, but maybe in his mind it was okay. We'll do it for both of us. The same.
A couple of things here. FL Dubs fan in the YouTube chat will be scary next season, and this is an overarching theme here as we separate from this weekend, and we'll see what the Warriors do moving forward. It's going to be scary next season with every team in the West getting better, except the Warriors and maybe Portland. True or not, it feels like we went from a wealth of riches to almost nothing fast. I got to hold out and see what the Warriors do. And I know Rockin' New Era 84 was saying, hey, if you trade Wiggins and Kuminga, you're not going to have any wings. JD, you're always talking about wings. I added the last part. But it's not that you would have to trade them for a better wing, I think would be the thought there. But that's where they're stuck. That's where they truly are stuck. They aren't good enough as they're constituted right now, and they are losing ways to get better. And again, Andis Brown, Warriors didn't have a strong alternate plan to pivot when the PG deal fell through. That's what it's more and more looking like, unfortunately. And so, we're going to have to see how all of this ends up playing out. And then Swin, Klay got paid 4 years ago. He got paid and didn't play for 2 years, back to back. They still gave him his money, offered him 2 years, $48 million. In hindsight, and look, I said this at the time, Greg, and I think this was slightly before we started being paired together, and the 2 year and 48, I thought at the time was slightly insulting. I really did. Like, I could see where Klay would think it's insulting. That was maybe more to the point on that.
Well, but I understand why he also chose to bet on himself, for sure. Like, that was my first instinct of that.
Well, did he win the bet or not?
No.
Not from a financial standpoint. Right? Like, that's what's interesting, because he's going to wind up taking less than that. So the Warriors evaluated it properly, but they're also not going to get the player, which makes it, all the more, I think, difficult to palate. All right, Dory in San Francisco is going to be our final call here of the night. We've also got one more clip about where the Warriors go from here. Then, hey, we're going to do the same show tomorrow, 6 to 9 here on the Sports Leader. Hey, Dory.
Hey, man, it's been a long time. I'm honored to be the last caller. You may have gone over some of this already, and I apologize if that's the case. But I don't know, you know Klay a lot better than I do, but if he values winning a championship above the combination of family and lifestyle of Los Angeles. To me, the better basketball fit is Dallas and then Denver. I mean, Denver's going to get Russell Westbrook, for God's sake, so they lost, PCP, so they need shooting. So I think those are the two basketball destinations. And if Klay wants to make a little more money to like the 15, 16 million instead of the mid-level exception, then I wonder if you can give your best targets in terms of, especially with Dallas, who could they conceivably get back? Could they get back Josh Green or Dante Exum or someone like that? I don't see Klay going to the Clippers. They have no chance for a championship, but I don't think the Lakers have any chance for a championship. And I think that's got to be one of his top, desires. So what do you think?
Yeah, a couple of things. And we mentioned it at different points. I mentioned it more on social media, I think, than we've done here. But I'll get into it. From a basketball standpoint, I think Dallas and Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia would actually be the best spot if they get Paul George, and it looks like they're going to. Dallas and Denver, yes. Denver definitely needs shooting. Dallas, for all the reasons you mentioned. Let's focus on Dallas, though. And I've mentioned it's really, depending upon what Klay gets, it's Maxi Kleber, $11 million. It's Josh Green, potentially $12.6 million. He's under contract for 3 more years. 12-6, 13-6, 14-6 the next 3 years. And they're acquiring more wings. So it seems like maybe they might be willing to part with Josh Green, although it looked like maybe they wouldn't over the last couple of days. And then the lower salaries, Exum's interesting, 3.1 for next year. And also Jaden Hardy at $2 million for next year. So depending upon where Klay falls, I think it could be one of the 8-digit guys, Josh Green or Maxi Kleber, and then one of the guys making $2 to $3 million, either Exum or Jaden Hardy. Dory,
but Hardy's a point guard. They don't need a point guard.
Well, they don't have a backup point guard anymore.
Well, Podziemski, don't you think?
Well, I think Podziemski's starting at the 2 right now.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if Klay's gone. Yeah. Thanks, Dory.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think Hardy's somebody that maybe they would want in the mix if you're going to look to go there. Greg, let's play the Zach Lowe clip. So thanks, Dory, and we'll see what they end up doing. I think it's more and more possible Josh Green will be available with the Najee Marshall deal. With was it Grimes? They got Grimes as well. Right? They got Quentin Grimes, right? It's all kind
yes.
Yeah. So maybe he could be somebody that they're more willing to keep than Josh Green. But we'll see how it all shakes out. While the Warriors would be good to get a couple of players, I don't think it's going to be it's not a situation where those players that they acquire are going to be significantly better. All right. Let's go ahead and play the Zach Lowe. This was from ESPN earlier, and he was addressing where do the Warriors go from here? They've missed out on Paul George. They've lost Chris Paul for nothing, and Klay Thompson's not coming back possibly for nothing as well. What do the Warriors do now, Zach?
Let's pause for a second. Let's pause for a second. We go real fast on these shows. There's a lot of transactions coming in.
Yep.
This is the end of something magical in basketball. Like, this was a dynastic team, and this guy, from the threes in Oklahoma City to the threes against Toronto to coming out with a busted ACL to shoot the free throws to the loudest ovation I heard in that arena ever. This is the end of something, and we need to take a moment to appreciate it. We also need to take a moment to ask, wait a second, hold on here. Same with the Clippers if Paul George leaves. What's plan B here for this team that has one of the 10 to 12 greatest players of all time still playing at an all-NBA level? They just waived Chris Paul. That salary slot's gone. They might lose an all-time great Warrior, all-time great player for nothing. That player would be gone. They don't have a ton of financial flexibility. It's not like they opened up $40 million in cap space. If this team wants to win right now at a decently high level, what direction are they going to go in? We saw them sniff around Paul George. I expect them to be creative and aggressive, but doors are closing, as Wendy said, and they might be grasping at straws in the next 72 hours.
Wow. That didn't make you feel any better, did it? Because if a guy like Zach Lowe It's one thing for me, Greg, to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't know what they can do, because I am at a little bit of a loss here the last couple of hours. And it's, we're thinking about things on the fly, and we're doing, what amounted to a 3-hour show here on a Sunday. We did about 90 on the air. We did about 90 on YouTube. And on the fly, as all this is processing, I'm thinking, what the hell can they do? Like, how can they possibly be a good team? How can they possibly be a better team than they were last year?
It's been a hell of a ride.
And then you hear a guy like Zach Lowe. You hear a guy like Zach Lowe, and he didn't have any thoughts. That's a little bit alarming here as we all try to process what just happened with Klay Thompson, Greg, and Chris Paul and Paul George and everything else.
I wouldn't call it good.
It's definitely not good. But you know what is going to be good?
Yeah, what are you doing tomorrow night?
It's going to be tomorrow night from 6 to 9. SportsPhone KNBR. That is going to be our more formal free agency special. I think we just did our free agency special, but we're going to do a SportsPhone KNBR Monday night free agency special. Basically, we're going to take all the tape. We're going to replay it. We're going to fuse together the YouTube. We're going to fuse together tonight. We'll add where Clay's going, because I think we'll find out between now and 6 o'clock. We'll just kind of tape a segment, and we'll just replay that show. I'm kidding. We're not going to do that. But we'll be taking calls. We'll be reacting in real time to everything that's gone on this weekend. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So, Greg, great job. Really appreciate it. Appreciate Kyle. Kyle, I see you, brother. Kyle Haar, thank you.
Kyle Chung, too.
Kyle Chung. Oh, did Kyle Chung? I didn't see Kyle Chung. Where's Kyle Chung?
Well, he left now, but he cut a lot of sound throughout the day for us. So
okay, well, good. No, I was gonna say, Kyle, get your FaceTime next time, man. Come and just nuzzle up to that camera next to Greg. So for the Kyles and for Greg, I'm JD. Thank you to everyone in the YouTube chat. We will be back tomorrow, right here, SportsPhone KNBR on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.